See, the nice thing about having a goatee like this is if I want to stroke beard hair that isn't for my goatee, I can just do this and stroke the hair right under my mouth. It just makes it really hard to talk because I pull my lip out when I do that. Anyhow, hey folks, Studio here. We're going to be talking about the Season 3 patch notes as a whole. No champion in particular, nothing entirely specific. But let's just go ahead and go over the generalness, and then I'll go into each individual role, and just my feelings on it, how everything is just kind of different now. So this is the Season 3 patch notes. It is different. The game is not played quite the same as it was before. Give it a few months' time, and it will be different for sure. But let's start with rule number 1. Everything anybody says is not entirely thought out. This includes every pro player, every new player, every theorist, every caster. Everybody who is doing stuff for Season 3 has not fully thought out their ideas quite yet. Now, that doesn't mean that people don't have good ideas. That doesn't mean people all have bad ideas. What it means is anything you listen to right now could change next week. Think about how the meta has changed since Season 3 got introduced. First it was, well, what do we build? Then it was all of a sudden, let's play a lot of Black Cleaver characters, and we kind of stopped. We're still at Black Cleaver. But think about how a lot of changes in League of Legends take a long time to really come into play, whereas things like Spellvamp, they very quickly become valued. Obviously patch notes and stuff like that happen, but you'll see a character kind of come out of nowhere. For example, Ezreal is my favorite. Obviously other AD carries got nerfed, but there was the Essence Flux build where you maxed out his W before all of his other skills, and that was really effective even when he was considered weaker. And then we really didn't find out about this till, June? I think Orbit was one of the first teams to show it in North America. Obviously it was shown around the world before, but the idea is there, where we had a feeling about a character, we had this theory, but it was entirely wrong, because we just hadn't thought everything out yet. Ezreal sucked, yeah, no, his Q is too mana intensive, doesn't do enough damage. No, just max W instead, he's awesome. And then he got nerfed a lot, and he's still pretty good. But, don't forget that everybody is probably wrong. This includes me. That's why I'm saying that I have a lot of feelings about this patch. These are not set in stone. If anybody says that they have this concrete evidence of what is right, either they're really smart, really lucky, or wrong. Alright? You got that? Let's go into the roles. So we're going to start with AP Mid. AP Mid, I feel, is one of the least changed roles. And I say AP Mid specifically because this replay was from Dignitas versus Meat Playground. And, well, this is the AP Mid for Meat Playground. That's Pobelter right there. He's playing, who's he playing? He's playing Talon. Now, the reason I say AP Mid is not very changed is because when you look at AP Mid, let's look at Diana's items late game. So Diana's right there. Ooh, I did not arrange that. Let's go ahead, just put Talon and Diana next to each other for right now. Look at Diana's items late game. A Doran's Ring, a Blasting Wand, Sork Shoes, DFG, Zhonya's Hourglass. Is that different? Is that different from what we've seen in the past? No. That's a pretty standard item build in Season 2. That's actually a great item build for Season 2. Better when DFG wasn't as nerfed, but still, it's a good item build. Ooh, I am on a... Go away, you. Well then. I've got 4 hours to make this video before that pops up again. But notice that Pobelter's playing Talon. Talon is not an AD. So, the AP mid role, there are a few changes. Ryze, for example, can build more mana right now. The starts are a little different, but the overall item build, the overall feel as an AP, has not really changed that much. You do a little bit more damage just because itemizing for defense is more expensive. Items like DFG are a little bit cheaper, and just overall you can do a little bit more. But your feel for how you play the game, what you need to do, it's the same. If you're a bursty AP, you're still a bursty AP. If you're a high sustained damage AP, you're still a high sustained damage AP. Someone like Talon, though, Talon is the new breed to mid, the AD caster. AD casters are incredibly potent right now. Probably one of the strongest additions to Season 3 is that AD casters have options. So think of what you would have built on Talon before. I'm thinking it would be probably either Brutalizer Ghostblade into a Bloodthirster, into a Bloodthirster, into a Bloodthirster, maybe Infinity Edge, but probably into a Bloodthirster or GA. Like, you did not have good options as the AD caster. What does Pobelter build now? He builds a Black Cleaver, and a Last Whisper. His options are still fairly limited, but the big thing is that Black Cleaver's really damn good right now. And AD casters as a whole, they're stronger. Think of the changes. Zeke's Herald now provides bonus AD. 80 runes and armor penetration is a bit more efficient when it comes down to it, just because of how they change the armor penetration calculation. So you can do more damage when you build properly as an AD caster, and that's just everything. And of course, that benefits them. There are things that don't benefit others, and that's important too. There is less move speed on the AD carry items, so they're easier to catch. Most AD casters tend to be burst assassins, like Talon, like Zed. Talon, I think, is the best example, so you can see the most of. And look at that crazy burst. Once again, we saw this already, but still, that damage is there. So as an AP mid, what has changed? Well, look at the item builds to start out with. First, we have Diana with boosts 3 potions, which one's already been used, and Talon has Crystalline Flask, 5 health potions, and his 2 mana pots. So item builds are just different for the mid lane now. You can start with boots, you can start with a flask, you have options. This is true for every single lane except jungle, really. Support, you can start flask and a bunch of items. Like the flask is now a viable start. That's one of the big overall changes, but you see it a lot mid lane. So because you can start flask and flask 5 potions, and either a ward or 2 mana potions is an efficient start, it means that the early harass is a bit pointless. If you can do a lot of damage very quickly, and just burst someone down, you're in a good spot. If not, they can back off, chug a health potion, chug their flask, and be efficient for a good fight, be in a good state. Now, how is AP mid game now? Same thing. If you're bursty, you're bursty. If you need to keep farming, you need to keep farming. The zone use characters are still powerful. Characters that benefit specifically from having a lot of mana and have single target spells, rise. You can buy Mura mana on them now. If you were a tier character before and you don't have single target spells, you have a nice defensive option with the Archangel's upgrade, but it's not that different. Zone use is still amazing. It's a very, very fleshed out role from the past, and that has not changed. AD caster, you build a lot of Black Cleavers. AD casters right now are insane. Build Black Cleavers, wait for the Black Cleaver nerf, then you probably still build one Black Cleaver anyways. But AD casters, the way they work, which, let's go ahead and look at the replay a bit. Once again, I showed Ho Builder's item build again, but look at it. It's going to be Black Cleaver as a base. Your goal is to preferably burst down a squishy, but because you get a little bit of HP from Black Cleaver, because you get attack damage, cooldown reduction, armor pen, all very efficient stats, but all very good at killing tanks too, because the armor penetration will stack with itself and really just shred through a tank's armor. It means you can do a lot. You can go for tanks, you can go for squishies. An AP character's role is kind of go for anybody. Go for those big CC and big initiates, exception being assassins. AD casters is kind of the same thing. Unless you're an assassin, someone like Talon who has a lot of AoE damage, and I mean a lot of AoE damage, you go for anybody. In this game, unfortunately, going for anybody was not an option because Twitch was so farmed out. So, just one quick recap. What's different for the AP mid role? AP mid, 2 different starts, so harass will be different in lane. It's not very different for AP. For AD, you can now AD mid reliably. A big thing too is because boots start isn't necessarily super important. You don't have to start with boots to not die in lane. It also means getting through ganks is a little bit easier because the jungler will most likely not have boots. Everything is kind of connected. But let's go look at the junglers now. So jungler starting out. Look at NKing's item build. He's got Machete, 5 potions. Look at Crumbs. He's got Machete, 5 potions. Look at the 10-minute mark, or 9-minute mark. What does Crumbs have? Still just a Machete. But Lee Sin now has a Madrids and boost mobility, and the first buy for the Crumbs is a lot of items, but it's a Spirit Stone, Chain Vest, and no Magic Mail, but Spirit Stone is the important thing. So how is the jungle different? Well, let's go ahead. Look at the first spawn. Look how tanky some of the new jungle is. Overall, everything has a bit more HP. There's a bit more focus on the single mobs and camps. So someone like Fiddlesticks is supposed to be a little bit stronger, but looking at this wolf, he starts with 900 base HP. That's a lot more than it used to be. I believe everything provides a little bit more gold too. But the new jungle, what it really comes down to is The first start, that first run, is going to be a lot harder than any subsequent run you do. When you go back for your first buy, you're going to buy an item to make yourself stronger in the jungle. It's going to be Spirit Stone or Madra's Razor, depending on whether you're more of a caster character. Someone like Cho'Gath, who can use Spirit Stone to build bulky, or someone like Lee Sin, who can use Madra's Razor and its proc just to sweep through the jungle. But the idea is you go ahead, have a harder first clear, and then focus on your first item will be focusing on you jungling still. Now, you don't start with boots, because machete is too important not to get, for the most part. Once again, could be wrong, but this is what I've heard. I've talked to a lot of junglers about this. So, because you do not have boots to start with, and other players might have boots, in this case, for example, Jax up top has boots for potions, this means that level 2 gank is not going to be as common. It can happen. Lee Sin, definitely a viable character for it still, but the way the game's been set up, you may not have a good chance to do it. You may not be able to catch up with someone. I mean, Lee Sin's got amazing base move speed at 350, but the idea is they want you to focus on juggling for a little bit more at the beginning of the game, and then you can transition to ganks. There are a few mechanics that are different. So, because creep camps are harder to kill, your mid laner has to wait a little bit longer before he takes every single Wraith camp you've ever wanted. So you get a little bit more farm because of that. You have more base gold coming into your character. Like, everybody has more gold coming in, but junglers had a major problem before where they just did not have enough gold. So you will have more gold to spend. You can get more items as a jungler right now. Heart of Gold is gone, so you will have to tank up. But if you want to tank up, well, look over at Cho'Gath. He's got the viable option. Spirit Zone can eventually build into a tanky item. You have to kind of focus on yourself, but now there's a lot of really good options. And if you look at Lee Sin, this game did not do a lot of ganking pre-6. There just wasn't a good setup for it. He just could not get into the lanes, could not get there quickly enough. Boost mobility would try and make up for it, but it's not really a good option to gank super fast right now, which means lanes are safer. And with lanes being safer as a jungler, it means you have to focus more on jungling. So what does it come down to? What is the big difference in the jungle? It's harder, which means you spend more time in there early on. You have items that will make you better at killing the jungle, so that's going to be a role you're going to excel at. Some characters like Anivia later on in Season 2 would just wipe every single camp except blue buff and red buff. Blue buff and red buff took an extra 5 seconds. Now, they can still do it quickly, of course, but they have to spend more resources, and they can't do it as early enough. So you get more farm. You get more gold coming in, so you can buy more items. The lifesteal is gone, and some of the tankiness you got as jungler is kind of gone. You can still buy lifesteal and wriggles, but it's much less efficient. It's weird. Like, everything about the jungle is more or less, it's harder, and you can't really do as much. Look at this sweet kill. That kill was awesome. But because you can't do as much early on, which means you focus more on farming, which means you get more items. Junglers, honestly, like, people talked about it before, but support junglers were incredibly powerful in Season 2, towards the end, because you could rely on not having gold. Someone like Maokai, someone like Cho'Gath, who just gets a lot of base HP. Now, because you get more gold, because you have to farm early on a bit more, just because there's less openings, you do more stuff, you have more gold. People really talked about supports having a lot more income coming in. And this is true. Supports get a lot more gold now. But as junglers, because you get more farm for yourself, you get to farm more in general. You get a little bit more gold, a little bit more GP10. It is harder to do starting out, but at the same time, you have options to make it easier. So items like Machete. Machete is a great item for the jungle. You clear stuff super fast. Almost always want to start with it if you're a jungler, at least from what I've seen. And in doing so, you just have a good jungle clear time. Casters go for Spirit Stone, or anybody more oriented with going for just spells and like procs, for example, Vorpal Spikes is better with Spirit Stone. Lee Sin goes for Madrids. I've seen less and less people go for Wriggles. The extra ward is nice, but the stats on it are not as efficient as it used to be, and that's the big problem. Because before you used to get like every single amazing stat, it was super, super cost efficient and also incredibly annoying in lane. Now it's just not as viable an option. So that's that. Jungle, though, it's one of those less changed roles in terms of noticeable stuff. Like, you don't do things differently. Like, you don't have to approach blue buff differently. But the way you end up playing, the way you end up going through the flow of the game, you have less early ganking chances. because you yourself will not be as good at ganking. Obviously, you can still do it at least, and it would still be great at a level 2 gank, but it's just less likely to happen, and you get more farm. Yay! Now let's talk about supports. Supports are fun. Supports, you get choices now. I think it's important to look at the level 1 item build for stuff like this, because this kind of shows how different things have come. So, Biscuiteer, of course, is going to give that biscuit, and the ward master, I forget what it's called, ward Skateer. Like, you're going to have vision. You're going to have the vision ward or the explorer's ward and the biscuit on every support starting out. That should be the case. Masteries I've seen usually are GP10, but the starts are different. So here, Patoy started with 4 wards and a crystalline flask. Here, Lemon God started with crystalline flask, vision ward, and 2 wards. That's not super different. That's pretty similar, actually. I've seen no ward starts. I've seen fairy charm starts. Just the items you buy at the beginning of the game can vary dramatically. Let's go to the 20-minute mark. What items have the supports made? Ruby Sightstone across the board. Boots 1. Only no GP10s on Zyra, 1 GP10 on Patoy. And really, you have these diverse options. What is Patoy going to finish first? Log of the Island Solari, then goes for Mikhail's Crucible. And I think Lemon God did not have that much gold this game, so he just really didn't finish anything. Does he finish his first item this game? Yeah, he goes for Twin Shadows. So there are lots of choices. There is no right choice most of the time. I just want to say that. Actually, that's not the right word. There is a right choice quite often. But there is no generic right choice. There is no, here is what you build every game. This is what you need to do to become a good support. And that is the case right now. There might be in the future, like once people study things out. But every support is playing differently right now. X Special Patoy, Lemon God, Spellsies, Zegan when you play support. Anybody you think of as a support, they're playing differently right now because all of a sudden they went from having a generic build where it's you build a Heart of Gold, then you probably build a Philosopher's Stone, then you can go for a Reverie maybe, or maybe you, I don't know, go for a Zeke's. Like, you had very few choices. Now, people aren't even building GP10 items. Some people, like X Special, go straight into Ruby Sightstone. Though you should probably go for Sightstone is the core item. Always buy a Sightstone. It is really, really cost efficient. To put it in other terms, it's worth more than a Philosopher's Stone if you plan to place a lot of wards, which you should. Now, what are the choices? Well, just about anything. So I just want to cover this one really quickly. Supports that scale well, like for example, let's just use Vladimir as an example. Vladimir, I think, is not a very good support, but he might be viable now. And I'm just using him because I don't think you should play Vladimir, but I can think of it a bit more. What does Vladimir really need to get going? He needs some items. He needs a bit of AP for the damage, he needs a bit of AP for the sustain, and he needs levels. Obviously, the levels would be the big tricky part, but because he has so much gold income just passively now, maybe you can go ahead, build someone who scales in the late game, build someone who needs to buy items as a support. There are definitely really good options for supports in general, but maybe you can just make a second AP carry, and that might be enough. Zyra's already a second AP carry without items, so that might not be necessary. But there is definitely a different trend too. The best supports in the game right now are Zyra and Lulu. Zyra because she has a billion things of CC, does ridiculous amounts of damage, and Lulu because she offers a lot of control, and you protect carries super duper well. Soraka, if she had better laning, I think she might come back. But that is what I've seen. It's Zyra, Lulu, Nunu. Nunu because of Nunu with a late game team. That's always going to be amazing. It's really hard not to accidentally flip you off because having the third finger be that choice is a bad idea. But Lulu because she protects the carry, Zyra because, holy crap, roots everywhere. Ha! It's a pain. I love playing her though, so it's okay. But when I say choices, the big choice is going to be first item. That should probably be a Sightstone once you go back to buy. And I say it just because it's super duper cost efficient. Philosopher's Stone might not be necessary because you might not need the extra gold coming in. You do need the wards though, and Sightstone, if you think about it this way, if you place 2 wards every 3 minutes, which Sightstone lets you do, you can even do more with that though, but just thinking about 2 wards every 3 minutes, that's going to be 150 gold every 3 minutes. A Philosopher's Stone gives you 30 gold every minute. So in a 3-minute time span, you would get 90 gold, but spend 150 for 2 wards. So buy a Sightstone, buy a Ruby Sightstone because it makes you super duper tanky. Now when I say options, well, look at this 22-minute mark. Look at Patoy's build. He's got Ruby Sightstone. Actually, that's not what I want to see. There we go. And he rushes a Locket of the Iron Solari. Now, Locket, I think, is a very, very good item right now. And this is kind of becoming the trend. I'm seeing lots and lots of supports rush this first. Why is it good? It offers you an extra shield. It's very cost efficient now. It's only 2,000 gold. But look at Patoy's HP as 2,400 HP. He gets 300 from Ruby Sightstone, 425 from Locket of the Iron Solari. That's 725 HP. And he also gets a bunch of cooldown reduction and a bunch of armor. He's a super duper tanky. Oh, Lulu. Mikhail's Crucible is an item that I've seen sometimes. That one is where it comes down to choice. Do you build a Zeke's? If you don't need to protect your AD carry that much, you want to go for more damage. Do you build a Crucible if they have a very scary CC you want someone to avoid? In this case, it could be Talon Silence, or it could be Zyra's Roots. Just gotta double check. Does it apply to silences? Yes. Okay. So the game has kind of shifted for the support. You kind of choose what you think your team needs. Now, this was never really the case before because you had so few choices. Usually there was the obvious choice. What your team needs every game is going to change. Now, I can't say there is a good generic support build aside from get Sightstone first if you're going for a gold per 10 item and just get it first anyways. But it's different. It's a lot harder to itemize properly. That's going to be important to remember. It's going to be very scary to remember. But when you do itemize well, you do a lot more because you have more items to do so. So, for example, before you were reliant on your skills. Your items would be aura effects normally, maybe an Aegis, maybe a Reverie eventually, but Locket never. You would never get an item like Twin Shadows. Now, as a support, you have to learn a couple things. One, what to buy, which will change every game. You're going to have to adapt to situations. Twin Shadows, for example, is a good item to buy if you want to slow people before they get to a target. The other, I don't even know what it's called because I don't buy it very often, but it upgrades from Cage's Lucky Pick. It applies a slow to someone else. I'm just going to call it the item that applies a slow to someone else, where if you're next to them, the ally you slow, the enemy gets slowed. That was a terrible description. So if you buff an ally and they have an AoE around themselves where enemies get slowed, if they're near them, that item is good if it's someone tanky, like Swain would benefit from that quite a bit. But so far I'm seeing a lot more Twin Shadows. I think Twin Shadows is just easier to use. But yeah, finding what to build right, it's going to be tricky. Good luck. My recommendation now is copy what the pros are doing, and what the pros are doing are all different from each other, so find your favorite pro. I do really like the Sightstone and to lock out the Iron Solari build, getting no GP tons, because you get super duper tanky and you can fight a lot. But that's just me, and that doesn't apply to every situation. Sorry. AD carry. If you're an AD carry, this patch kind of sucks for you. Let's see. Look at the stats on Phantom Dancer. What's the big stat that's gone down? Movement speed. Movement speed is a bitch to get right now. You do not move quickly. This is a major concern because in this game you have characters like Talon, characters who can burst you very quickly. AD casters, I'd say, primarily tend to be burst casters, and AD carries used to rely on a lot of kiting potential. They have less kite because there are now better bursters. DFG is amazing early on again, so is AD casters. Like I said, tend to be burst. Just in general, burst is higher. If you're an AD carry, you probably can't protect yourself. This is not really evident in this game, but just want to point that out. You will not be able to protect yourself most of the time against good assassin comps, and because of that, you're very, very reliant on your support. Before, it used to be the case where AD carries, they could take the burst of one character. There might be a little bit of peel to protect them, but it would take at least two characters to take them down, and they could just back off, kite one of them, and just win the fight and survive that way. Usually, and this is more of a late game thing. Now that's never guaranteed to happen. You might never reach a point in the game where you can take the burst from a caster and still be able to back off and keep fighting. You might just die, and that's a lot of it is because you can't move around as quickly. They can keep up with you without slows because the AD casters tend to move a bit faster. Triforce procs might not be enough. Things can go terribly, terribly wrong right now for ADs, and there's less to kind of cushion that. There also isn't a really strong attack speed option that people like so much anymore. Hurricane, unfortunately, doesn't change a lot. Hurricane is an item that, in theory, would be really good on a lot of people, but Kog'Maw, I'd say, one of the people it sounds best on. It doesn't work on his W, so there's not a lot you can do. So let's watch Light Sledge here. Light Sledge is actually in a great position because the enemy team can't really keep up with him. Then Rux jumps on him, and then, well, just keeps fighting back. But that's only one character, and he still can't move in and out of the fight as quickly as he wants to. He can move forward very quickly, of course, because he's Vayne, but on his retreat, it takes a lot longer for him to get away from Rux. That's because, well, he just doesn't move as quickly. This is kind of a weird game, but I'm seeing a lot more AD carries like Twitch being viable, not because Twitch is very good at protecting himself, but because he only needs to be alive for a couple seconds to win a team fight. So if you're an AD carry right now and the enemy team has someone like Talent, you have to really hope you have good support. You can survive. You can definitely do a lot on your own. It's just you can't do as much as you used to. And that's important to remember. A lot of this will change with Black Cleaver nerfs. Black Cleaver is the root of a lot of problems right now. But right now, AD caches are too scary. Muramana on Rise, DFG on Veigar. The APs burst you so damn hard. There's very little you can do about it. And of course, anybody who gets a Black Cleaver does 1,000,000 damage right now. Aside from that, in terms of laning, let's go ahead and look at the starting item build. The laning is different once again. Everybody has viable item choices. Looking at Vayne, she starts Doran's Blade. This does not end well. I don't know if that's really reliable. Twitch, what does he start? Boots 3 potions. I've seen Longsword 2 potions with a rush to Vamp Scepter because there is less sustain overall. So really what's it come down to, what are AD carries like right now in the bot lane? Well, you might not have Boots at level 1. Laning is more aggressive in terms of all-ins, but poke is a little less viable because of how creep aggro works, or how creep damage works. So before there used to be 2 masteries, Toughness and Indomitable, I believe they were. It was the rank 1 mastery, or tier 1 mastery and tier 3 mastery, and it reduced minion damage and damage you took from champions, or from all sources, by 1, and it was like auto attack damage. So that would reduce damage by 4. Let's see if we can't catch it in action. Look at Batoy. This is a good example. He auto attacks. Does he get creep aggro there? Yeah. How much damage? He doesn't get creep aggro. Weird. There you go. He got creep aggro there. He takes 1 attack, 2 attacks, and he takes 22 damage. He hit for about 40 damage. He took another auto attack there down to 30 damage, and then AmiQDPie takes about 40 in response himself. I don't believe he got hit by anything. He's still down to 524 HP. Minions hit like trucks right now, especially ranged minions, but actually ranged minions specifically, because you don't have a way to mitigate their damage. Before, because you would chop that off by 4, that's almost reducing it by, it actually almost completely eliminated melee damage from melee minions, and ranged minions were cut in half. So just remember that. Just remember that the lane pokes are a little less viable unless you get a lot of damage in quickly. The lane all-ins are more viable just because everybody's got a bit more damage, and that's just kind of the case. Everybody hurts more, so you can do more damage, but because of the damage you take from minions, you have to go a bit more involved with a poke. Like Batoy here takes a lot of damage, but he has Crystalline Flask and a Biscuit. So, like he took more damage than Light Sledge there, but he can heal it, and he knows he can. Light Sledge, because he doesn't have any potions, he's taking a lot more harass. And well, really, when do carries get safe? They don't. If there's ever an AD assassin doing well on the enemy team, or even AP assassin, whoops, didn't want to do that, then your carry will not be safe without good protection, or being super duper far ahead. But hopefully, not every game they'll be super duper far ahead, unless you're AD carry. If you're the AD carry, good luck, but you probably won't be super duper far ahead every game. And that leaves one role. Top lane. What's top lane like for me right now? Top lane, well, less jungle ganks involved, but more one-on-one. So matchup is more important. The characters that were viable top lane have changed a bit. For example, Jax is still really good. You can still build a Black Cleaver. Same with a really kind of benefits from Black Cleaver too. But Triforce characters, and characters that needed an early GA are a little bit weaker, just because GA is a little bit weaker and Triforce is a little bit more expensive. Like 4,200 gold is a lot of gold for an item. But think about it this way: you can start with a flask on just about anybody. Here, the real Kiwi kid, who is a great top laner, starts with a flask and potions and a ward. So because there's a much more likely chance of there being an early ward, ganks aren't as relevant. Because ganks aren't as relevant, jungle pressure won't do as much. You can get someone to back off for a few seconds, but you're not going to get you're not going to get as many kills. So because you're not going to get as many kills, what really matters is how you do in the lane 1v1. The jungle just will not do as much because it can't do as much. It is not as viable to go for ganks and to snowball this lane. Which is kind of the case overall. Don't be surprised if you, as a jungler, have to farm a lot because you can't get ganks. But this means that what they tried to stop on Riot, I'd say like snowballs in the top lane, they're still there. They're still definitely there. It's more of an experience thing. It's more of a 1v1 lane. That before it used to be a 2v1, where very likely there'd be a chance of the jungler coming in, ganking you, and just totaling you in lane. Like there's nothing you can do after the gank because you lost so much. That is not really the case anymore. Now it's just, if the other guy kills you, you're in a terrible, terrible spot, and they can really control the lane like that. It's scary. If you are a top laner right now, you may have noticed it's easier for you to fall behind, but harder for you to come, like, you can't do as much to come back necessarily. Obviously, if the enemy team doesn't buy wards, you can punish them. If you have an oracles, well, you can't punish them as much anymore, but still, the vision ward coverage might be enough. Now, looking at the early items, there are a couple things that we noticed very specifically. Rumble, flask wards, Jack started boots, potions. You have different viable starts. I'd say you probably want to have at least 3 potions for the top lane just to be alone. I want to say just how efficient this build is. Even on Rumble, Crystalline Flask is nice because you're getting 2 free health potions every time you come to lane, which pays for itself. But this build of Crystalline Flask and 5 health potions, that is 300 HP plus 750 HP. That's 1,050 HP. That's a lot of HP. And because of that, it's kind of the same thing as mid lane, where early on, those ganks might not, or that pressure might not do as much because you're only going to burn health potions. All-ins are a lot more viable. All-ins are more viable across the map. Late game, if you're an AD bruiser, a Black Cleaver is really nice. I mean, top lane is still top lane. You're a little less likely to be relevant, I'd say, in the mid late game than before. Like, you're less likely to be that dominant guy, just because there are now characters like Talon who can do it instead. But you're still a major force. You're a major mid game force, for the most part. 1v2 lane is still super shitty too. That hasn't changed. So overall, what do I feel about this? Well, laning has gotten passive in terms of sustain, but all-ins are now more viable. Like, if you get an all-in kill because the enemy's going to be more focused on sustain, like, it's harder to fight back. If you have 15 health potions, that does not make you good at fighting level 1. Though chances are the guy you're up against also has 15 health potions. And by 15, I, of course, mean the flask and 5 health pots. Now, what is the big weakness right now? There's a bit of broken going on. Black Cleaver is an obvious one. I still think Merman is broken on Riot. I'll keep saying that. There are a lot of broken things going on. Things that are a bit too strong. AD carries are incredibly weak right now because their AD assassins are too good. AP assassins are still pretty good, but not as strong as AD assassins when they get a Black Cleaver and just eliminate carries. Now, obviously, a lot of this is opinion, but what I would recommend if you're playing this new patch, just try shit. Just try different things. Try different starts. Different starts is the beginning of everything. If you're playing a support, realize you're going to have to make more decisions. If you're playing a mid lane, expect to go against a lot more ADs. Top lane, realize that with good ward coverage, which you can start at level 1 now, you are in an island. And that island, you better focus on your 1v1 skills. You better focus on taking out that guy you're up against, or he'll kick your ass and I will touch the microphone with my hand. Whoops. Sorry. AD carry, get a support to protect you. Lou is going to be really viable at that. If not, good luck. You might have to kiss your ass goodbye, but you might be able to protect yourself. You got to play very defensively. You got to expect the enemy to throw lots of shit at you, and it may not be avoidable. And jungler, you're gonna be in the jungle a lot more. You're gonna focus a lot more on jungling. Passive farmers are a lot more powerful than they used to be because reliable ganks do not do as much. So if you're someone who just wants a jungle and hit level 6, that might be viable now. Anyhow, in the studio, this is all for now. Just want to go ahead and put all of my thoughts of the patch into one very long video. And yeah, adios folks.